coming off the Florida loss that was extremely disappointing, Steve Sarkisian was asked, has this been a pretty point blank from Kirk Bohls, has this been why has this season been so disappointing? And here's Sark on the pushback on that, and I'll take Sark's side on this. I know not many will, but I will. Here is Kirk Bohls' question and then Sark's answer.
Steve, what would you say the main reasons are this team is underachieved?
According to who?
Well, when you're preseason number one, I think most people would agree 3 losses is not achieving what you are capable of.
I mean, I guess that's into who voted us number one, okay? What I think is that this team has competed their tail off. They've been faced with a lot of different adversity and injuries, and a lot of stuff has come across this team's plate. And I'm very, very proud of them with their resiliency. At the end of the day, at the University of Texas, we're held to a very high standard. And
all right, so there's Sark and pushing back. But look, I mean, I'm not going to say that was an unfair question from Kirk Bohls because it's a very fair question.
It is.
But it's also not unfair to how Sark answered. Sark is trying to get this team ready for Arkansas.
Sure.
He's not going to confirm that it's been he's trying to keep his team and himself in a mindset of winning 2 more games and getting to 9-3.
The season's not over, technically.
Correct. I mean,
right? You can't think that way.
That's a question that you can expect a candid answer from Sark when the season is over.
Sure.
Officially over. It's like, having been through many of these coaching conversations, I remember vividly, and I think a lot of you out there do, when Tom Herman was essentially fired by Chris Del Conte. The decision was made after the Oklahoma game. Yet they still had 6 games to play, and they still had a season to play, and a bowl game to go through. And Chris Del Conte put out statements and said this and that. And it wasn't until after they won the bowl game that Tom Herman was called in and told he's been relieved of duties, even though we all knew it after the Oklahoma game back in October. This is, Sark, how else is he going to answer that? If he sits there and answers the question like the fans wanted to answer it, why has this been an underachieving team? Well, he's confirming that his team's underachieving. He's trying to convince his team that we're still in this thing and we have a game to play. And he's got a really, really challenging week. I mean, this might be, to me, what we're about to watch against Arkansas and on Saturday it's as challenging a week for him than it's been since 2021 after they lost Iowa State and Bo Davis was banging on the bus and yelling at people. This is a culture win. This is a culture game for Sark. I mean, yes, they've underachieved this year. There's no doubt about that. But to expect him to confirm that in a press conference to everybody, he's not going to do that. And he shouldn't do that. We all understand this team is more talented than the performance has been on the field. We understand that they've been undisciplined and inconsistent and at times have looked disinterested, which is unlike Sark teams of the past 2 or 3 years. And but there's still games to play.
And to his credit too, right? Yes, it's been a disappointing season to the fans because of the standard that Sark has got this team to the level they have. I mean, they've gone to the semifinals for the championship the past 2 years. But he is right in the same breath of, all right, we've already beat 2 top 10 teams. We have another chance at home to beat one of our in-state rival and beat a team that hasn't lost yet. I'm assuming they'll beat Samford. You could beat 3 top 10 teams and it could still be considered a failure season, which that's the world we're living in the SEC. So, no, I agree. I think the question is fair. Of course, the criticism of the question is fair. I'm
not criticizing the question. That's Kirk Bohls' job, and I have no problem with the question. But also, I'm not going to criticize Sark for how he answered it.
Well, that's more what I'm saying is that's not his job that they put Texas as number one.
But Sark didn't push back on that when they were number one. He embraced it, which he should have. Point being, you still have 2 games to go. And I'll say this, if Texas wins these next 2 home games, beats Arkansas, and beats a top 3 Texas A&M, who's undefeated, that's not a failure of a season. It's not.
No.
I don't care what anybody says. I've seen failed seasons at Texas. That would not be one.
Right.
It would be disappointing.
Sure.
It wouldn't be the outcome you had hoped for, but this whole college football playoff or bust scenario now that people are building is ridiculous. That's dumb. I've seen failed seasons at Texas. If they were to win if they lose both of these games and the culture rots, this is why I say this is a very challenging week for Sark, and that's why he answered the question how he answered it, which is to keep his team motivated and keep his team locked in and keep everybody locked in. He's not going to sit there and admit and say what a failure this year has been or what. Of course he's not. He's going to keep it positive. He's going to keep it pushing forward. And he's going to tell his players that, hey, we've beaten top 10 teams before. We can win these 2 games. And yes, it was disappointing how it went at Georgia. That's on us. But we got to turn the page and go to the next game. So I understand exactly the question. I also understand Sark's answer. and why he gave it. And, again, if they go 9-3 and beat 3 top 10 teams along the way and don't play in the 12-team playoff, I will not say that that's a failure of a season. I think that will not be allowed. That's a solid games. Season.
Yeah, two teams that are legit going to be in the playoffs, maybe playing each other in the national championship. It's not a failure season. We told you, and we know this, and everyone knows this when it's happened. The sore thumb is what kept you out, just like we saw last year with an Alabama. We saw with an Ole Miss. We saw with South Carolina, that 9-3 team that got left out of the playoffs because you had a stumble in the road. There was a bump in the road. That was the loss at Gainesville. So if that's the case, right, they still have to win these 2 games.
Yeah,
you can't go out there and admit the season's technically not over.
No.
I mean, you go and you beat the brakes off Texas A&M, who's number 3 or 2 in the country at that point. Who knows?
Well, that's why
there's still a sliver of hope, to make the playoff.
Sure. I mean, because again, there's 5 spots for. Oklahoma could lose.
Right. Missouri
Who knows?
and LSU are not. They still have talent on that team. Yeah.
Somebody else could lose. Oregon could lose a game. Right. I mean, there are teams that are in the
USC this weekend, right?
Correct. I mean, so and again, I know fans are emotional and out for blood, and they want answers, and they want. Well, you're not going to get it from Sark right now.
Right.
Sark is going to keep his head down and try to coach this team. That's what he should be doing.
Right. That's his job.
And that's why I mentioned the Tom Herman thing. Like, CDC wasn't going to come out and say Tom Herman's fired, even though a lot of us behind the scenes knew after the Oklahoma debacle, when only Sam Ehlinger stayed out there for the eyes of Texas and everybody else went to the locker room. That was it. I mean, he was gone. And the only person that didn't know that was Tom Herman, because he felt like all the way to the end, once he won the bowl game, that he could keep the job. But no. But behind the scenes, it was over. That example of coaches will say what they have to say in the real time, and so will athletic directors. Because is it lying? Okay, but you're trying to keep the plane in the air.
Right, you have to.
And you have to. You have to do right by this team. That's why I would predict or believe Lane Kiffin, whatever we think of him, he will do right by his locker room, and he will give Ole Miss an answer this week. Maybe by tomorrow.
I think he should, right?
Of course he should. I mean, Lane Kiffin, if flight tracker software is tracking his family flying to Gainesville on Sunday and then Baton Rouge on Monday, they're obviously exploring the opportunities during the bye week, which I'm not going to criticize Lane Kiffin for exploring opportunities during his bye week. Everybody's off this week, essentially. Right. That's what the bye week is for. He didn't do it before, while they were still grinding out games and winning football games and getting themselves into the top 6 in the country.
Right, they're 10-1.
And so now do it. But he needs to give an answer to Ole Miss by tomorrow, or by Thursday at the latest, and he owes it to his team. He owes it to his locker room of what is he doing. And that's my point on Sark. Sark owes it to his team to coach this thing out. And I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying people asking for him then to go to a press conference and air out his team for their inconsistencies and dropping balls. And of course he's going to keep it positive. And I don't think you can be mad at him for saying what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what I say to my kids and talk to my kids about is not, I'm going to protect them. When I'm sitting talking to my kids about things, when I go out of the house and somebody says something bad about my kid, I'm going to protect my kid, even though I know what's going on behind the scenes, right?
Sure.
That's what you do.
Right.
You protect your people, and that's what I believe Sark is doing. So I'm not going to, again, criticize him for answering that question that way. Sure, it's been an underachieving season. They've been inconsistent. The culture's being tested right now. But yeah, the losses are three losses at Ohio State, at Georgia, and at Florida. Mm-hmm. 3 of the tougher places to play in all of college football.
For sure.
No matter what Florida was, I think we could all agree that's still a team with a bunch of NFL players and 100%. A team that, at least for that Saturday, coming off their bye week, was playing for their coach at the time, who was still their coach.
They did this last year.
And they played really
against
well.
Ole Miss. They beat them, a team that had a lot of talent, right, and kept them out of the playoffs.
And, we've glossed them on this show, the box of chocolates team, right, where we're not sure what we're getting on a game-by-game basis. I think Sark's probably in the same boat. I'm assuming Sark was as surprised about the performance, at least in the first half on Saturday, as anybody.
Right.
Like, come on, guys, we prepared for this. They're not trying to drop passes. They're not trying to jump off sides, but yet they continue to do it in really critical moments. Trust me, behind the scenes, like a parent would, that's frustrating when your kids don't achieve to the level that you want them to achieve to. But you also have to understand that they're trying and they're working at it. But, man, and you're going to protect your kids if somebody says something. If the neighbor starts popping off about your kids, you're going to go fight that guy, right? That's what you have to do in this case. And there's still 2 games to play. When we get to the end of the season and the season's over, I would imagine, having covered Sark since he got here, he'll be pretty candid about the challenges that they face this season. But right now, he's not going to do that. And I think people have to understand it and at least kind of
Got to
see
keep
where he's
that
coming
locker room
from.
intact. And
Well,
you
this is a really tough week, and it might be extreme to say it goes back to the 30-7 loss in Ames back in 2001. But remember that loss in Ames in 2001. It was his first year, and he was trying to figure out who was in and who was out. They ended up the next game gave up 57 points to Kansas. Okay, I mean after losing to Iowa State and it gave up in a surrender game, they gave up 57 points the next week to Kansas.
Jack's senior year, I believe.
It was. And so at that point, Sark understood who was going to be on board and who was going to be off, and he cleaned house. I'm not sitting here saying it's to that level.
No.
But the culture has been really strong. And credit to Sark and this staff in the last couple of seasons, and it led to championships. It led to putting trophies in the trophy case, and it led to trips to the playoff each of the last 2 years. And it's not over for them to make the playoff right now. Is it unlikely? Yes. But you're going to go into your locker room and tell this team that they're underachieving? No.
There's going to be
You're going to defend. There's still games to be played.
Right.